DC judges now admit to their anti-Trump bias. We got this memo that got dropped from our friend Margot Cleveland in an exclusive over from the Federalist, and she's getting reaction from the DOJ now that this memo has been revealed, and it happened to summarize another meeting with the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts. So there was this convention of all these judges, and someone memorialized what happened here, and we had people like Judge Boasberg asking Roberts, how do we stop Trump, essentially? And so reaction came out from Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General. He said a newly revealed memo confirms that at least some federal judges were predisposed against the Trump administration. We know, yeah. This is a serious breach of the judicial oath and a threat to the rule of law. Every litigant, regardless of politics, is entitled to a fair forum, and the judges are supposed to enforce that. That's their role. Here was another one from Chad Mizell. He said, this is very troubling. He's also at the DOJ, Chief of Staff under Pam Bondi. Says, very troubling report from the Federalist and Margot, but perhaps explains the completely lawless order issued by Judge Boasberg, which was unsurprisingly stayed by the DC Circuit. And Margot reported on the following. Over on X at Prof. MJ Cleveland, make sure you're following her. We appreciate her work on this. She says, federal judge James Boasberg, the same judge who ordered Trump turn those airplanes around with those illegal aliens on them, bringing them back to our country, they're entitled to extra due process. He advised Chief Justice John Roberts and some 2 other judges that his DC colleagues during this meeting, he said, Your Honor, we're concerned that the administration would disregard rulings of federal courts and lead to a constitutional crisis, said Boasberg in his whiny, pathetic lib voice, according to a memo that was obtained exclusively by the Federalists. Now, that Judge Boasberg and his fellow Democrat judges would discuss how a named defendant in numerous pending lawsuits might respond to an adverse ruling is shocking. Why are you talking about the case or any Trump cases that are in your court with the Supreme Court judge? Equally outrageous is those judges' clear disregard for the presumption of regularity, something we've commented on here, which is the idea that branches of government give the other branches of government the benefit of the doubt and say, we're going to presume that you were acting with regularity. We're not going to look at you with skepticism and make you prove that you were doing your job. We're just going to presume you were, since we're on the same government, on the same team. Has been the standard forever until Trump came in, and now the DC judges decide to flip it. Now, during the week of March 11, 2025, members of the Judicial Conference met in Washington, D.C. for the first of its 2 regular meetings. Now, the court says this is the judicial conference of all the judges. Now, it consists of Chief Judge Roberts, who is there, presides over the body, as well as the chief judge of each judicial circuit, the chief judge of the Court of International Trade, 1 district judge from each regional circuit, making for a group of about 30 judges. Now, while the conference mainstay is considering what they talk about there is the administrative and policy issues affecting the federal court system, they talk about things like virtual appearances and continuances and speedy trials and what's bogging down your docket. Gosh, we just had this influx of these types of cases, and so we need to reorient, and our court is being overwhelmed because his policy and all these things, right? It's talking about like the administration of law, not about the substance of the cases, because that's what you do in the courts of appeals, in your briefings, not at backroom meetings with other judges, and making recommendations to Congress concerning legislation that involves the judicial branch. Now, a side conversation revealed a disturbing detail between these colluding judges, the predisposition of supposedly unbiased judges against Trump. In a memo obtained exclusively by Margot, a member of the Judicial Conference summarized the March meeting, including, quote, a working breakfast where they all ate together, at which John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, spoke. According to the memo, somebody memorialized it, some judge. District of Columbia, Chief Judge Boas next raised his colleagues' concerns to the judge. Chief Justice Roberts, Trump's a dictator. What should we do about this? We think he's going to disregard the rulings of the federal courts, leading to a constitutional crisis, which is another phrase for a dictator. Okay, he didn't say that because he's a judge and he's trying to be proper, but he's saying that explicitly. Chief Justice Roberts expressed hope. Just relax, Jeb Boasberg. Just take it easy. that would not happen, and in turn, no constitutional crisis would materialize. So Roberts, don't be so hysterical, okay? It hasn't happened. It's not gonna happen. And so stop crying about it. You don't have to act preemptively. Why are you so freaked out about this? Everyone else gets the presumption of regularity. Trump has appealed your order and he's working through them. And we, Jeb, said that your ruling was invalid. You had no right to tell him to turn those airplanes around. Get out of here. And then the judge said, oh, okay, Boasberg, remember, found a separate parallel path and then latched on to the case using the contempt power rather than his regular court power, and kept it anyways, in violation of the Supreme Court. Trump, however, is not merely the president. He's also a defendant in scores of lawsuits, including multiple cases in Washington, D.C. Now, as such, this conversation did not concern generic aspects of the judiciary. It was about a specific litigant who was in Boasberg's court, and his comments revealed that he and his colleagues hold an anti-Trump bias because the Trump administration has complied with every order. We've made that point here, right? People are like, when is Trump just going to ignore all this? And we're like, he has said, I'm not going to at all. We'll take it up to the Supreme Court. Repeatedly, much to the chagrin of many people who are tired of it. Now, the DC district judge's concern also went to the normal presumption that courts hold. One that says that everybody's actually doing their job. They don't think it applies to Trump. But what is both troubling and ironic, writes Margot, is that Boasberg, Jeb, in a case in which he completely lacked jurisdiction, as the Supreme Court said, entered a totally lawless order, then ignored it, as we mentioned, and held Trump in contempt and used his contempt powers, not his injunctive powers, under regular order. Now, as I said at the time, Margot, the chief judge seemed hell-bent on stopping Trump, and that's because they think Trump is a scofflaw. But Trump has showed a ton of restraint against these maniac judges. And recently released emails related to the case before Judge Boasberg confirm Trump was intent and remains intent on obeying all court orders, and he has, even the lawless ones. Even the ones that are clearly lawless, the last one from Judge Brian Murphy, he didn't ignore it, even though it was clearly lawless. He took it up to the Supreme Court, asked for clarification, and they clarified it. So Bove also was in a lot of this. Whistleblowers claim that Bove suggested the DOJ ignore court orders. An email obtained by the Federalist disproved that. In that email, the whistleblower's supervisor wrote that the legal team was called to a meeting with Attorney General Bove, deputy, and advised our team that we must avoid a court order halting an upcoming operation at all costs. As Senator Chuck Grassley, the chair of the Judiciary, noted yesterday, Emil Bove telling subordinate litigators in advance of litigation to avoid a court order that negatively impacts is not ignoring a court order. It's called legal strategy. Hey, let's do this, because if we don't do this, she's going to issue an order to the following. And so we have to act this way so she doesn't issue that order and issues an order to this mechanism. Regular old business. Now, at his confirmation hearing, Bove testified under oath he never advised anybody to violate a court order. That's ridiculous. And Judge Alito reminded Americans a mere month after the conference that Boasberg attended. He said that even the judiciary has an obligation to follow the law. They can't just use the injunctive power to take control over the entire country in their nationwide injunctions. And so Jeb called out for inquiring against John Roberts, and John Roberts sounds like he was doing the fatherly thing. Just, okay, it's not going to happen. Relax. Stop being so stinking hysterical, Jeb, and we'll sort through it. So that, of course, is a great breaking story. Thank you to Margot Cleveland for bringing that to our attention. And we'll see if the Supreme Court wants to rein in these judges in any more concrete fashion rather than just John Roberts nudging him back into Sanityville, which obviously didn't work. So shout out to Margot. Glad she got that document. Shout out to the judge who memorialized that. We know there's so much of this going on. And the judiciary is like the least transparent branch of all of them because they're judges and they're special. So you can't get anything. FOIA doesn't apply to them and more. They have these secret meetings and who knows what happens behind those closed doors. So Margot exposing it, shining the spotlight. Shout out to Margot Cleveland. Make sure you're following her over on X at Prof. MJ Cleveland and the Federalist.